So this is the AI and Intelligent Automation Network on a roadshow to Procter & Gamble Newcastle. So thank you again for having for having me in. We've got Ale from UX, we've got Richard from HR, and we've got Sinead back from the business. So I guess, Sinead, you should start us off and paint the picture of what business we are talking about so that then we can talk to Richard and Ale respectively.
So the business we're talking about here in Newcastle is really the shared services that expands across Manila and Costa Rica, as well as in Newcastle. And it's really the financial aspects of shared services that we're involved in.
Okay. All right. So that's the business. Richard, when Sinead says that, and when she shares what she and John Barraclough shared earlier, which is we are trying to make everyone's jobs cooler. We are trying to make everyone's jobs better. We are not trying to reduce FTE. Those are my words. Those words have not been spoken by anyone here within these walls, other than me, who is traditionally outside of these walls. So understanding that, how do you approach this intelligent automation from an HR perspective?
I think one of the key things we found is we need to try and paint the picture for people in terms of what's evolving and what's changing, and try and help people at kind of an organisation level and an individual level in terms of how they play their part, what skills and capabilities they're going to need for the future.
Okay. That sounds like traditional HR work.
Okay.
How does it change and how is it different here in this fourth industrial revolution, so to speak?
I think we're possibly less clear on how to get there than we've been in the past. If I take the example on the finance skills, we had a very clear picture of what we wanted to support in terms of finance and accounting and domain skills. And we've been largely on that journey for 10 years. And quite successful at it. So you kind of build up a pattern for people. It's quite a stable platform that people are used to. On the digital, that's happened over the last 2 or 3 years for us. And we're still not exactly sure, at least for the majority of the organisation here, what's going to change and how they're going to feel about it. So you're into a much more flux, much more kind of a really having leadership paint the picture and then really come in with programs that can help build skills.
So painting the picture as you go, adding the people to that new picture.
It's quicker than we've seen before.
What advice would you give to other intelligent automation professionals that are working with HR or maybe who haven't called HR yet?
Partner. Ultimately, people will have a reaction to how work is changing. The change always drives a certain amount of anxiety, and different people go through that in very different ways. That's where your HR professionals can come in from a change management perspective, but only if they're helping with the communication and clear on what the capability needs are going to be and how quick.
We need to know what the mission is. We need to know what the plan is. We need to know that we are working quickly here. That's okay, but you got to let us know.
Yeah.
Ale, Richard's talking about kind of painting that picture. That is, those beautiful brushstrokes that we see at the end. That's you, right? So I guess just give us a sense of what you are doing in UX overall and how intelligent automation affects what you do, or you affect what it does.
Sure, it's definitely two ways, as you're saying. So the whole process, the whole shared services and solutions start with a business need, and the business need looks for a utility. First of all, anything we do, any product needs to be useful, and it's useful to the business. The next step where user experience comes into play is where we look at usability. Because we don't want people to spend time on training, we want them to be able to do their job and do their job to deliver value to the business. So ultimately, usability is something we do a lot. We do studies on usability. We talk with real people. We don't talk to the global expert on one single aspect only. We also talk to the average person. We talk to a new hire. We talk to anyone who will have a stake into what we are delivering and see if this meets their need, if this is understandable for them. The last aspect that we are now entering into with digitization, with the all intelligence part that is behind it, is desirability. Because if something is desirable as well, not only it delivers value to the business, and it delivers it in a simple way, but it delivers it consistently and to a very large population. So that's what clicks into really making a UX product a better product.
Yeah, and Sinead, when I spoke with Roxana and when I spoke with Lauren respectively, they brought up the UX of their own experiences, and then also with Lauren, with her work, the user's experiences. That dashboard being so functional is key to what she is doing. What might you add to that?
I think it requires a different way of thinking when you're designing. So I think there has been a big shift, certainly for me, in how I look at either choice of technology or really what I'm going to use that technology to do. Because before, when you think about big ERP systems, that's the engine that drives like a majority of information in P&G.
Sure.
Data all the way through.
The backbone.
From manufacturing to when we send it out the door on a truck. But I didn't have to think about, does the user that's interfacing or sitting in front of this ERP system really enjoy working with it? Are
Right.
they going to really use it? Are they leveraging it to its full capability? But now there's that big shift in, I have to think about the technology that I'm going to implement. I'm going to have to think about, how is the user going to interface with this? Yes, we talk about machine learning, but I'm not going to put a really complex algorithm in front of an accountant,
Right.
because that's not the correct thing to do. What they want is the output and the aha moments and the insight that data is going to give them.
Yeah.
And that's where the partnership works with Ale, which is, I need to really understand what's in the brain of my accountant. What do they really want out of this? And then I've got to design with technology how to give them what they want, versus I'm just going to put whatever in front of you and you're going to use it because that's the backbone of the company.
Yeah. As I look at you, Richard, I realize that you might remember the 1990s in a professional way, right? Exactly. But you were in business, so to speak, in the 90s, at least some of them. Maybe not at such a high level, but you remember the talent that was dealing with these ERP systems, as we say, which is to say, everyone. How has the talent, in terms of intelligent automation specifically, how is that talent different than your ordinary, average, everyday folk that used to just roam the halls?
I'm not sure it significantly is. I mean, Procter & Gamble's a promote from within company. We've got a lot of people with longevity, and that's in part our challenge in terms of embracing some of the new and the digital. But they've all been through this before. I mean, we had ERP platforms that changed. I was the logistics manager at the Manchester site, going back to the late 1990s, and we will have had big platform changes back then.
Right.
One of the key differences is we build capabilities. People drive their own change, so they're enabled to drive change through either process design or even adopting some of the digital changes in coding. That happened less so in the past. We were much more command and control.
Right. And you're speaking now again of change management. You mentioned it before. And I wonder, you said the change begins with the person, the change ends with the person. It's all about that person changing. How do you foster that in an HR role? How do you help that occur?
And there's a number of things that we do. Just at a very kind of a team level, to have people embrace change and adapt to change in a positive way. Part of that is just teaching people that a positive mindset on change, if nothing else, is people experience change. They experience change better emotionally if they've got positive experiences of change in the past. And you're often dealing with people on a one-to-one basis in terms of any anxieties and fears. So you really have to go into it with some I think, from a communication standpoint, some high-level stuff. We're just about to walk into a deployment we're going to do. We're going to talk about our aspiration of being the digital service center of the future. But then you've also got to drive it down to a very granular. So what's your part in that? And even at times, really having management able to understand and articulate and listen to people's concerns, and then go back and provide help and support.
Yeah. It sounds like you know what you're doing.
I hope so.
Yeah, exactly. Ali, that's the human side, the carbon-based folks. You're grappling with the technology, almost wrapping yourself around it. What has surprised you about intelligent automation, this fourth industrial revolution, dealing with this kind of technology that is different than what has come before it, but in some ways very much the same?
That's a very good question. The first things that I could definitely think about is how things have changed in people's mindset. While in the past, anyone who failed on their journey to adopt a new technology blamed themselves. This is traditional of people of my generation and before.
Yes.
The new generations are no longer blaming themselves for not being able to do it. They blame the technology, and this is where we come into play, and we need to create those bridges.
Yeah.
We know that people have an objective and they're committed against it. They look for the path of least resistance, and a UX designer job is to make sure that the path of least resistance is exactly the one that we design. So we create a single road from A to B.
Yeah.
And automation, intelligence, and analytics, it's all enabling people to find their answer at the right time. And otherwise, they will find the answer. It simply is going to be through workarounds. It's going to be from different paths.
Yeah.
It's going to be from non-visible path that will not deliver the full value to the company, which is indeed what we want.
How do you ensure that that happens then, right? Or that last part does not happen? How do you kind of find the person where they are and marry the technology to where they need to be?
It's actually much simpler than a traditional technologies we think about, and it's about sitting and talking with people. It's about observing what happens.
As you mentioned earlier.
Very often we sit and be very quiet, silent. Our best technique is observation. It's not interviews, it's not surveys, it's not questionnaire. We look what people are doing in their own environment. We give them a task, see if you are over or under budget.
Yeah.
And nothing else. And see what happens. And there's tons of information, and then people normally are getting into a spirit of talking about their experience, talking about their frustration, talking about their aspirations, what they want to achieve, what is missing in there, what would make their job better. And this is when then we'll collect all of it and we bring it back to the technical teams to do something that is meaningful. Yeah, it's delivering the meaningful aspect, not the whole more technology-driven, aspirational complexity. It's not information for the sake of it, as much as it's not automation for the sake of it.
There you go. All right. Nothing for the sake of it, so to speak. Sinead, generation just came up. Generation has come up in a couple of the conversations that we're having here in Newcastle. Ale pointed out, and I'll say, kind of a millennial mindset of, no, the technology is broken. Now, what I've come to know is that, again, painting with a broad brush, but millennials turn out they're right. We Gen X people, we were doing it much harder. We're much harder on ourselves for no reason. And so I wonder, because I feel akin to you, you might be in my generation, how do you manage that from a business perspective? We talked about diversity of thought in our other conversation. How do you benefit from each of these generations and make sure that they're speaking the same language to you so that we can drive this business forward?
I think it's an interesting question. I think that we will continue to work on it. I won't say that we've cracked it completely.
Sure.
And I think it's something that will change every year as we bring new people in. Like I talked about, we have year placements that come in as part of their university degree, and they always bring something very, very different. I think, you need to have an openness to listen. And that's been something that has come naturally to some people, but not to others. So we've got to develop that from really the bottom up and the top down, where it's good to have, and P&G is great at driving this kind of diversity, and they're really good about getting people to open their minds on all levels and not just age. But I also think it's a different way of working. So we've very much started to look at more agile versus waterfall from a project methodology. We have to, with the speed this technology is driving.
Almost everybody in the space that I've spoken to says the same thing.
And setting up that development team purposely to ensure that it has that multi-dimension. So the different generations and the business all working in the same goal, that's where the aha and the magic happens.
Right.
But I think it's change the culture, change how you think about it, and structure in a way where you almost ingrain it in. If you're going to develop a new design, you all have to sit together and hold hands as a development team, because each of you has a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And the magic only happens when you work together.
Right. So kind of co-sponsoring that ownership, that's helpful. What is surprising to you generationally speaking, because you, like me, are somewhere in the middle of kind of everybody that's around?
Yeah, it depends again, for me, a lot of that comes back to individual barriers. Some people have absolutely no problem embracing, if you like, some of the new digital work. They've been effectively coding in different forms from Excel going back 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are used to a method of working where they'd be much more, say, customer facing, and haven't necessarily driven a lot of change back in the processes. And some of those individual transitions for people are much more difficult, but they're not impossible.
Yeah.
But you've got to have that, reception of mind as much as anything else. At the end of the day, most of the time what we're bringing in terms of the technology is for the benefit of the people doing the work. So, John's got a great example. He talks a little bit about kind of, maximizing the kind of head-up work that people do, providing more interesting and meaningful work than transactional. Most people can see that as an aspiration in
Sure.
their roles. And occasionally we will come across people that find that transition difficult, and you've just got to take your time and step through it with people.
You're being a good HR person in answering it from a personal standpoint. I wonder if you will allow me to kind of broaden it out,
Yep.
paint with a broad brush. Have you noticed distinctions generationally in your role?
I think there is a little in terms of how people embrace technology changing the work. I think that's more something that we see in our millennial population necessarily than some of the others. But that's not exclusively true. And it's interesting, I was talking to John earlier, one of the things I think that we've moved away from, we used to talk a lot about having a blended organization. So you'd have functions which kind of got together in teams.
Right.
Be that IT partnering with finance, IT partnering with, say, product supply or human resources. We now talk much more in terms of individuals having blended skills. And certainly within the company where we're getting, and particularly within the parts we work within, a little less hung up on those functional silos than perhaps we did in the past. And it's much more about the skills that people can bring and the openness to embrace where we're going.
Yeah, and that came through in the conversation I had with John. All right, so we're up to advice. You've already given some. I'm going to ask you to give more. But I'll ask you first. For other UX executives that might be listening, for other intelligent automation executives like Sinead, who maybe haven't involved UX as much as they should, what would you share? What would you say? What must folks do right now?
UX is a must-do on its own, and my advice is don't start with too big of an objective. Go with something that is tangible. Find couple of examples where the user experience could be improved by your personal experience, and go after them. It will create a momentum upon which at the beginning it will be the UX professional who goes after. It's UX team of one often be called, and advocate what user experience is. Very soon you'll find yourself in high demand and be actually need to make choices on where to engage. And this is always going to be the case for a successful UX engagement.
There we go. Richard, he ends it with what's in it for me, so that checks that box.
Excellent.
Yeah, we'll go to Sinead last. Richard, as far as pace of change, as far as the new cadence of work in HR, what would you share with intelligent automation professionals, with HR professionals alike?
I still think it comes back to that kind of partnership. Know what's happening in your business. I mean, that's true of HR in any business, not just one that's in a world that we are in terms of digital transformation. Great HR people are business partners first and foremost. So know what's happening and know where things are likely to go, and ask the right questions in terms of what help you can provide.
So Sinead, we're here at Procter & Gamble to find that you have talented executives around you in this panel, in the other panel, with the conversation with John, not surprising. Beyond make sure you've got a great team around you from, all functions. What other piece of advice might you give to fellow intelligent automation professionals?
There are no barriers. There is nothing you can't do. Don't put doors or walls in the way. You may find them as you go through the journey, but start with a blank piece of paper. It's a huge opportunity you don't get a lot of the time. So don't do the old-fashioned project methodology of I must find my boundaries and then I'll figure out. Know where you want to get to, know the end point, but just start going and you'll figure it out on the way.
Amen. All right. Thank you, Ali, Richard, Sinead. Thank you so much one more time. And here we are in Newcastle. I can't believe I'm not going to be here for an evening. Everybody says that's the best part of the thing.
It would have been.
Yeah.
Would have been.
Oh, well. Next time.
Next time.